"We'll hope not," said Macfarlane. "And if anybody does, well, you didn't, don't you see, and there's an end. The fact is, this has been going on too long. Stir up the mud, and you'll get Kay into the most unholy trouble. You'll be in the shocking box yourself. So will I, if you come to that. I should like to know how any one of us would look, or what the devil we would have to say for ourselves in any Christian witness box. For me, you know, there's one thing certain, that, practically speaking, all of our subjects have been murdered." "Macfarlane!" cried Fettes. "Come now," sneered the other, "as if you hadn't suspected it yourself. Suspecting is one thing, and proof another. Yes, I know, and I'm as sorry as you are this should have come here," tapping the body with his cane. "The next best thing for me is not to recognize it. And," he said coolly, "I don't. You may, if you please. I don't dictate, but I think a man of the world would do as I do. And I may add, I fancy that is what Kay would look at our hands. The question is, why did he choose us for two assistants? And I answer, because he didn't want old wives." This was a tone of all others to affect the mind of a lad like Fettes. He agreed to imitate Macfarlane. The body of the unfortunate girl was duly dissected, and no one remarked or appeared to recognize her. One afternoon, when his day's work was over, Fettes dropped into a popular tavern and found Macfarlane sitting with a stranger. This was a small man, very pale and dark, with coal-black eyes. The cut of the features gave a promise of intellect and refinement, but which was feebly realized in his manners, for he proved, upon nearer acquaintance, coarse, vulgar, and stupid. He exercised, however, a very remarkable control over Macfarlane, issued orders like the great Bradshaw, became inflamed at the least discussion or delay, and commented rudely on the civility in which he was obeyed. This most offensive person took a fancy to Fettes on the spot, plied him with drinks, and honoured him with unusual confidences in his past career. If a tenth part of what he confessed was true, it was a very loathsome rogue, and the lad's vanity was tickled by the attention of so experienced a man. "I'm a pretty bad fellow myself," the stranger remarked, "but Macfarlane is the boy. Toddy Macfarlane, I call him. Toddy, order your friend another glass. Or it might be, Toddy, you jump up and shut the door." "Toddy hates me," he said again. "Oh, yes, Toddy, you do." "Don't you call me that confounded name," growled Macfarlane. "Hear him? Did you ever see the lads play knife?" "He would like to do that all over my body," remarked the stranger. "We medicals have a better way than that," said Fettes. "When we dislike a dead friend of ours, we dissect him." Macfarlane looked up sharply, as though this jest was scarcely on his mind. The afternoon passed. Gray, for that was the stranger's name, invited Fettes to join them at dinner, ordered a feast so sumptuous that the tavern was thrown into commotion, and when all was done, commanded Macfarlane to settle the bill. It was late before they separated. The man Gray was incapably drunk. Macfarlane, sobered by his fury, chewed the cud of the money he had been forced to squander, and the slights he had been obliged to swallow. Fettes, with various liquors singing in his head, returned home with devious footsteps and a mind entirely in abeyance. The next day Macfarlane was absent from class, and Fettes smiled to himself as he imagined him still squiring the intolerable Gray from tavern to tavern. As soon as the hour of liberty had struck, he posted from place to place in quest of his last night's companions. He could find them, however, nowhere, so he returned early to his rooms, went early to bed, and slept the sleep of the just. At 4 in the morning he was awakened by a well-known signal. Descending to the door, he was filled with astonishment to find Macfarlane with his gig, and in the gig one of those long and ghastly packages with which he was so well acquainted. "What?" he cried. "Have you been out alone? How did you manage?" But Macfarlane silenced him roughly, bidding him return to business. When they had got the body upstairs and laid it on the table, Macfarlane made at first as if he were going away. Then he paused and seemed to hesitate, and then, "You had better look at the face," said he, in tones of some constraint. "You had better," he repeated, as Fettes only stared at him in wonder. "But where, and how and when did you come by it?" cried the other. "Look at the face," was the only answer. Fettes was staggered. Strange doubts assailed him. He looked from the young doctor to the body, and then back again. At last, with a start, he did as he was bidden. He had almost expected the sight that met his eyes, and yet the shock was cruel. To see, fixed in the rigidity of death, and naked in that coarse layer of sackcloth, the man whom he had left well clad and full of meat and sin upon the threshold of a tavern. awoke, even in the thoughtless Fettes, some of the terrors of the conscience. It was crass Tibby which re-echoed in his soul that the two of them had known should have come to lie upon these icy tables. Yet these were only secondary thoughts. The first concern regarded Wolfe. Unprepared for a challenge so momentous, he knew not how to look his comrade in the face. He durst not meet his eye, and he had neither words nor voice at his command. It was MacFarlane himself who made the first advance. He came up quietly behind and laid his hand gently but firmly on the other's shoulders. "Richardson," said he, "may have the head." Now Richardson was a student who had long been anxious for that portion of the human subject to dissect. There was no answer, and the murderer resumed. "Talk of your business. You must pay me. Your accounts, you see, must tally." Fettes found a voice, the ghost of his own. "Pay you?" he cried. "Pay you for that?" "Why, yes, of course you must. By all means and on every possible account you must," returned the other. "I dare not give it for nothing. You dare not take it for nothing. It would compromise us both. This is another case like Jane Gilbreth's. The more things are wrong, the more we must act if we're all right. Where does old K keep his money?" "There," answered Fettes hoarsely, pointing to a cupboard in the corner. "Give me the key, then," said the other, calmly holding out his hand. There was an instant's hesitation, and the die was cast. MacFarlane could not suppress a nervous twitch, the infinitesimal mark of an immense relief, as he felt the key between his fingers. He opened the cupboard, brought out pen and ink and a paper book that stood in one compartment, and separated from the funds in a drawer of some suitable to the occasion. "Now look here," he said. "There is a payment made. First proof of your good faith, first step to your security. You have now to clinch it by the second. Enter the payment in your book, and then you, for your part, may defy the devil." The next few seconds were for Fettes an agony of thought, but in balancing his terrors it was the most immediate that triumphed. Any futile difficulty seemed almost welcome if he could avoid a present quarrel with MacFarlane. He set down the candle which he had been carrying all this time, and with a steady hand entered the date, the nature, and the amount of the transaction. "And now," said MacFarlane, "it is only fair that you should pocket the lucre. I've had my share already. By the by, when a man of the world falls into a bit of luck, he has a few shillings extra in his pocket. I'm ashamed to speak of it, but there's a rule to conduct in the case. No treating, no purchase of expensive class books, no squaring of old debts. Borrow, don't lend." "MacFarlane," began Fettes, still somewhat hoarsely. "I put my neck in the halter to oblige you." "To oblige me?" cried Wolfe. "Oh, come! You did as near as I can see in the matter, and you downright had to do it in self-defence. Suppose I got into trouble, where would you be? The second little matter flows clearly from the first. Mr. Gray is the continuation of Miss Gilbreth. You can't begin and then stop. If you begin, you must keep on beginning, and that's the truth. No rest for the wicked." A horrible sense of blackness and the treachery of fate seized upon the soul of the unhappy student. "My God!" he cried. "But what have I done? Where do I begin? To be made a class assistant in the name of a reason, where is the harm in that? Service wanted the position. Service might have got it. Would he have been what I am now?" "My dear fellow," said MacFarlane, "what a boy you are. What harm has come to you? What harm can come to you if you hold your tongue? Why, man, do you know what this life is? There are two squads of us, the lions and the lambs. If you're a lamb, you'll come to lie upon these tables like Gray or Jane Gilbreth. If you're a lion, you'll live and drive a horse like me, like Kay, like all the world with any wit or courage. You're staggered at the first. But look at Kay, my dear fellow, you're clever, you have pluck, I like you, and Kay likes you. You are born to lead the hunt, and I tell you on my honor and my experience of life, 3 days from now you'll laugh at all these scarecrows like a high school boy at a farce." And with that MacFarlane took his departure, and drove up the wind in his gig to get under cover before daylight.